Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Theta, for leading the meeting. And a special thanks to Laura for inviting me to speak on this meeting, which is a real honor since I don't get to it. I don't think I've actually been on this meeting before. I am Peggy, and I am a compulsive eater and food addict. And I weigh and measure 3 meals a day off the gray sheet, and I commit those meals to my sponsor. And I don't eat in between no matter what. Abstinence is the most important thing in my life without exception. And one day at a time, I work to put this program first. And I do that because anything I put before it, I will lose. I will lose my abstinence, and I will lose that thing that I have put before it. And I know that from past experience. And I am here at this meeting and every meeting to build a defense against the first compulsive bite. That's my mantra, and I'm sticking to it. And I've been sticking to it for many, many years. And I want to start by saying that I could not be abstinent today without all of you. This is a program of community. It is a community of relationships, and it's a community of truth that comes from those relationships. Getting the disease of food addiction is a disease of isolation, and the solution in perfect symmetry to balance out that isolation, the solution is a program of relationality, of relationships, deep, deep connections that we form, not in the sense of friendships and going to the, going boogieing out in the bars together, not those kind of relationships in which we see each other in the deepest sense of understanding who we are in our darkest, most terrifying place. So let me start by saying what I always start by saying, which is, if I can stop eating for one day, if I can stop eating compulsively, anybody can do it, because I am a desperate, desperate case when it comes to compulsive eating and food addiction. And if anybody can stay abstinent, if I can stay abstinent, anybody can do it, because like many people in this program, I've been through what we call no matter what's. My no matter what's have mostly been medical. I've had very, very severe life-threatening medical problems. I've been hospitalized for months and months at a time and had big parts of my intestine cut out. I've had to be tube fed. I've had multiple surgeries, life-threatening surgeries, in which it was pretty scary. I've actually had to go without eating under the care, obviously the care of medical care. I was not allowed to eat because of my intestinal blockages for 2.5 weeks. But I was abstinent because I did it in the relationship of this community. So I am a food addict. And what I mean by that, rather than going into detail and telling you story after story about how I couldn't stop eating and the humiliation I faced and the obesity, I was at my highest that I weighed myself, I was 270 pounds. Now I'm a fraction of about 110 pounds. So just to think how much, I am without. To be a food addict means to me 3 things. First and foremost, it means that this substance, this food, sugar and carbohydrates, hijacked my brain. And it means that my brain did not, when I was putting those substances into my system, I had no freedom of choice. I had no autonomy. I had no agency. I could not do what I wanted to do because food told me what to do. I was a slave to my cravings for food. And I did not have any escape from those cravings. cravings were guns to my head. I was driven by them. And this is the second thing. To get that food, which had that substance which hijacked my brain, I did things that were absolutely catastrophically dangerous to my survival. I did things with such adverse consequences, and I did them over and over and over again. And that is the very definition of addiction. It means doing things that are so sabotaging and so insane and so dangerous. And that's what, the second step came to believe that only a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. What addiction does is it makes me insane. And being insane is when you do the same things over and over again with catastrophic consequences, and then do it again 5 minutes later, even though I have burned my hands on that proverbial stove so badly. The theory is, in normal psychology, is that when a child sticks their hand in the flame and burns it, then they don't do it again. That's not what happens with addiction. With addiction, I stick my hand in the flame, I burn, I hurt, I can't breathe, I'm humiliated, I'm ashamed, I'm horrified, I'm isolated, I'm in desperate shape. And then I do it all over again, over and over again. And I can't stop myself. The third aspect of it is that I do all that in total and complete isolation. The despair that comes of doing those insane years also leads me to completely isolate. It's not like other people can't see that I'm obese, because that's so shameful. It's not that I'm really hidden. It's that what I do to myself is put myself in complete isolation from other human beings. When it comes to this behavior, it is absolutely a desperate sense that I am the only one in the world. I didn't know there was a name for what I had. I thought that I had some absolutely deep character flaw, because that is what addiction does, is it tells me I'm a bad person. It doesn't tell me you're a sick person and that you need, intervention for this disease. It tells me I'm a moral disaster. I'm a failure. And why does it tell me that? Because I do all these horrible, immoral things. I stole money from my mother's purse, my father's jackets. I stole food from roommates. I stole food from people in dormitories when I worked in offices where there were collective refrigerators and people would bring their lunches. I would stay late and then steal all the lunches and eat them and shove them into my mouth. And people would leave messages saying, who is the slime ball who's staking my lunch, stealing my lunch? And I knew that they knew it was me, but I couldn't stop myself. I did dangerous things going out in the middle of the night because I could never keep food in my own house because, I was always trying to be on a diet. So those were just some of the crazy things that I did. I was utterly powerless, and I spent years and years and years desperately looking for help. And the few times that I would sort of tell people what was going on, like my parents never really understood. All they knew was suddenly their cute little daughter had gotten as big as a house, obese. They didn't know what to do. They had no idea. And their only recourse was to imagine that I had something called willpower, and that they were sure that if I just, exercised a little willpower, that everything would be fine. And in fact, the whole attitude that I got from people, I think even therapists, that I started going to therapists when I was in college, basically was, oh, you're so smart and you've done this. And I was very athletic when I was young, and I was a cheerleader, and I was, this and that. And yet they kept saying, you can do it. You have all these assets, you have these qualities. And I would be screaming silently, like that famous painting, and I'm blanking on the painter. You all know it. It's called The Scream. And that was me. I was that silent scream saying, no, you don't understand. I can't do it. I can't. I'm helpless. I'm desperate. Nobody could help me. They told me to do the most insane things. So I went and I put myself in a psychiatric hospital where I said, I'm going to commit suicide. I had Valium, so I'm going to commit suicide. So they hospitalized me for 6 weeks, and they never understood the food thing. They just treated it as a depression, which did nothing. I had therapist after therapist. They couldn't do anything. I went on every diet in the world. This was now in the 70s, so people didn't do, the surgery. I forget what it's called, where you wrap your stomach. That wasn't so common back then. So, but I would have done it in a heartbeat. So when I first stumbled into a Grey Sheet meeting, I was in my late 20s. I was a frantic, desperate case. And I saw a little advertisement that said, here's the amazing thing. I lived in Cambridge, Mass, the heart of the Grey Sheet community. That's where it all began. I was so lucky, I'm not a believer in God, but I am a believer in a higher power, because somehow, how do you explain that such an undeserving creature as me would end up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where the Grey Sheet community, it was only 2 years old at the time. So this was 1979. And if I had seen a sign that said, do you believe in God and the 12 steps, then come to this thing for eating. Thank God nobody did that. And the reason they didn't do that was because Grey Sheet is AA for food. And AA is a program of attraction. It's not a religious program. It is a program that says the only criteria for membership is a desire to stop drinking. Ours is the only desire is to stop eating. It didn't say anything more. It just said, come to a meeting. And I went to a meeting, and for the first time in my life, I heard people say, yeah, you're a hopeless case. Yeah, you can't do it on your own. Anybody who told you that you have the character to overcome this is lying to you. You can't do it. You're absolutely hopeless when it comes to food. And instead of going, I hear that, I felt for the first time seen. I felt heard. I felt recognized for the very first time. Oh my God, they're acknowledging who I am. I am a hopeless case when it comes to food. And that acknowledgement was the beginning of my recovery, because being seen and having a name and then being told you're not alone. Here is room after room after room of people. And I'm sorry, am I getting a message of timing? Because I'm not seeing, I'm not seeing, maybe. Yeah. Pardon me?
Dory language, so I just put a timer so you get action.
Can you tell me what my time is? I'm completely off.
1 minute, 36 seconds. So 1.5 minutes.
Left?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just jump to the chase then. So this program is what I call in perfect symmetry with this disease. It's a perfect balance. The disease is about food. And what Grey Sheet does, it says we fight the food with the food. We don't deprive ourselves of food. We teach ourselves and each other through relationships to love food. The second thing is that this is a disease that it tells me that I need to be isolated. It tells me that I am a hopeless case by myself. And the program says you can't do this without relationships. And relationships, starting with our sponsors, has to be the ground, the absolute ground foundation. If somebody's having trouble with food and I don't hear about how they're working on that with their sponsors and how many meetings they're going to. Meetings, 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 sponsor relationship, connection, connection, connection. And finally, this is an extreme disease. This is not a delicate little, oh, I ate too much, I need to lose a few pounds for my wedding attendance. This is a disease for desperate cases. And so the symmetry of our program is that it is a program of radical recovery. We don't say that if you're going to a special occasion, that it's okay in AA to have a martini just because it's a special occasion. We don't say that you have 99% powerlessness, but when you go to a restaurant and you're embarrassed, you don't have, you suddenly have 1% power over food. We're 100% powerless, so we weigh and measure 100% of the time. So let me just close by saying the opposite of addiction is connection. It is a community of connection, and the only way, and I call it a community of truth. It's truth that comes through recognizing our darkest parts of each other. And that recognition brings me freedom. I have freedom today for the first time ever after all those years of darkness. So I guess I've hit my time. I completely apologize for not having seen the timer or heard the timer, and I don't eat no matter what.